My wife cheated with her boss, stole $150, $0 in our divorce, and now she's claiming I forged the will to hide the $500, $0 inheritance I never knew we had. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd say this, but the moment I found out my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with her boss, everything changed. It was like watching my entire life fall apart in seconds. I mean, I had suspected something was off for a while. She was more distant, secretive even. But I never imagined she'd go this far. The thing is, I caught her red-handed, and it wasn't just a one-night stand. It was months of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. And the worst part, she lied straight to my face about everything, spinning stories about how she was just stressed or working late, but I knew better. It all started a few weeks ago. I noticed her phone kept buzzing at odd hours, and she'd quickly hide it. She'd get defensive if I asked about her texts or who she was talking to. One night I decided to check her phone when she went to bed early, claiming she was tired. I saw messages from her boss, Mark, that were more than professional. They were flirtatious. Flirty texts, late-night calls, and even plans to meet outside of work. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? We had been together for over 10 years, and I thought we were solid. But that wasn't the worst part. I happened to stumble across bank statements and emails that showed a different side of things. Lisa had been stealing money from us, about $150, $0 over the last year. She'd been funneling it into some secret account, claiming it was for emergencies. But I knew better. She was planning something, and I didn't like it. I confronted her about the money, and she brushed me off, calling me paranoid and accusing me of not trusting her. But I knew the truth. I could see the evidence clearly. Then last week I decided to dig a little deeper. I got access to her email account. Don't ask how. I was desperate, and found even more disturbing stuff. There were emails from her boss, Mark, discussing plans to expand their relationship, and her talking about how she was going to leave me once she got the money, the inheritance she knew I supposedly had. I was stunned. I never knew we had $500,000 sitting in some inheritance I'd never even heard about. Turns out her family had left her a fortune, and she planned to hide it all, maybe to start fresh with Mark or whoever she thought was better. I don't even know how to describe the feeling. It was like I'd been punched in the stomach, then kicked in the ribs. Betrayal, anger, sadness, all of it hit me at once. I thought we were solid, that I was building a life with her. Instead, I was just a pawn in her game, a fool who had no idea he was married to a liar and a thief. The worst part, she kept lying, spinning stories about her stress, work pressure, and how she still loved me, but I saw through all of it. She was a bitch about it too, always accusing me of being paranoid or jealous when I confronted her. It was like talking to a wall. Nothing she said was believable anymore. I decided I had to confront her face to face. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I had to know exactly what she was planning, how deep her lies went. So I set up a meeting with her at our favorite cafe, knowing she'd come, thinking she could talk her way out of it. When she arrived, she was dressed to impress, but I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. I laid everything out, her texts, emails, bank statements. Her face turned white, and for a moment I thought she might faint. She tried to deny everything, of course, calling me crazy, accusing me of invading her privacy, and then she threw in some classic lies, saying I was misinterpreting everything, that Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting. But I had the proof. I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this one. I told her I knew about the money, about her plans to run away with Mark, and how I'd had enough of her lies. Her reaction, she scoffed, called me insecure, and then she said, "You're just jealous because I don't love you anymore. I'm tired of pretending." That's when I realized she had been planning this for a long time. She didn't care about us, about the marriage or the life we built. It was all about the money and her new lover. Honestly, I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. It was a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could she do this? How could she keep lying, stealing, and sneaking around behind my back? I felt betrayed on every level. The woman I thought I knew, my wife, my partner, my best friend, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And the worst part, I knew she was lying about the inheritance, about her plans, even about her feelings. She was playing me, and I was too blind to see it until now. After that confrontation, everything felt like it was falling apart. I spent the next few days in a daze going over everything I'd uncovered. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the lies she told, the way she looked at me with that fake smile. I kept thinking about the money, $150,000 she'd stolen, the inheritance of $500,000 she was planning to hide. It was like I'd been living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not just the cheating, but the theft, the deception, the lies about the inheritance. I started planning my next move. I needed proof, solid proof, to show the courts or anyone who would listen. I couldn't just confront her again. I had to be smart about this. I decided to hire a private investigator. It was a risky move, but I needed someone who could follow her, gather evidence, and confirm what I already suspected. I wanted to catch her red-handed if she was planning to run with the money or hide it somewhere. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like everything was normal. She'd come home late from work, always with that fake innocent look, as if she hadn't just lied through her teeth. She was bitchy too, throwing around accusations about me snooping or not trusting her. She called me paranoid, insecure, and even accused me of trying to control her, but I didn't care anymore. I knew the truth and I was going to use it. One day I caught her in a lie. She told me she was going to see her sister out of town for a few days. I didn't believe her. I decided to follow her. It was risky, I admit, but I needed to see where she was going. I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. I watched her check in with Mark. They spent hours together and I saw them holding hands, kissing in the lobby. The evidence was clear. She wasn't just working late, she was with him, planning her escape, probably with the money she'd been siphoning off. That night I felt a rage I'd never known before. I wanted to destroy her, to make her pay for what she did. But I knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just lash out blindly. I had to build my case, gather more evidence, and then decide what to do next. I also thought about the inheritance. I knew she was trying to hide it, maybe transfer it offshore or into some secret account. I needed to find a way to get access to that money, legally or otherwise. I started digging through her financial records, her emails, her phone logs. I found some bank statements that showed transfers to foreign accounts. I even managed to get a hold of her email server, where I saw her discussing her plans with Mark. They were talking about getting out of this mess, starting fresh, and dividing the inheritance. I realized that once she had the money, she'd leave me behind like I was nothing. That thought made me furious. I had worked so hard, built a life, only to be betrayed for greed and sex. In the meantime, I kept my cool on the outside. I didn't want her to know I was onto her completely. I played it smart, waiting for the right moment to act. I contacted a lawyer, explained everything, and started preparing for a divorce. I also knew I had to protect my assets, especially the inheritance. I didn't trust her one bit anymore. Every time she looked at me with that bitchy smirk, I wanted to smash her face in, but I knew I had to be better than her. She was still pretending to be innocent when I confronted her about the hotel. She denied everything, said I was crazy, and accusing her without proof. She played the victim, claiming I was just jealous and insecure, but her eyes betrayed her. I saw the guilt, the fear, and the desperation. That's when I decided I'd had enough. I told her I was going to take everything from her, the money, the house, her freedom if I had to. I wanted her to feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me, and that's when she snapped. She started yelling, calling me a control freak, a jealous husband who just couldn't accept that she wanted more out of life. She said she was done pretending and that she'd leave me with nothing. That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her run away with the inheritance or destroy what little trust we had left. I was furious, but I knew I had to keep my head. I had to be strategic if I wanted to win this battle. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I talked to the lawyer, who advised me to document everything: texts, emails, bank statements, anything that could prove her theft and her plans to run. I also hired a private investigator who confirmed what I already suspected. Lisa was actively trying to hide the inheritance and had been planning her escape with Mark for weeks. The pie caught her meeting with him again, this time in a fancy restaurant, and even saw her transferring money into an offshore account. That was the final nail in the coffin. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior grew more hostile. She started accusing me of spying, of trying to control her, and even of being paranoid. She called me crazy more times than I could count. She accused me of not trusting her, but I knew the truth. I was just trying to protect myself and what was rightfully mine. I could see she was panicking, her bitchy attitude almost turning into outright desperation. She'd lash out at me, call me names, and try to manipulate me into thinking I was overreacting. But I knew exactly what she was up to. One day I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I sat her down and told her I had enough. I laid out all the evidence I had collected, her hotel rendezvous, the offshore transfers, the emails from her boss. I told her I knew about her plans to leave, to take the inheritance, and how I'd be fighting for every penny. Her face turned pale and she started to scream. She told me I was crazy, possessive, and that I was trying to ruin her life. She even played the victim, crying and saying I was abusing her trust. I just looked at her and said, "You've lied so much, I don't even know what's real anymore." It was then that I realized I needed to take action. I contacted the lawyer again and started the divorce process. I also filed a temporary restraining order to keep her from transferring any more money or hiding assets. I knew she was trying to get ahead of me, but I was ready. I was sick of her bitchy attitude, her manipulations, her lies. I wanted her out of my life, and I wanted what was mine. I also made sure to get a forensic accountant involved to trace every penny she stole and to locate the inheritance. The lawyer told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence I'd accumulated. That night I sat alone in the house, feeling numb but relieved that I was finally taking control. I'd always been a straightforward guy, worked hard, paid the bills, loved my wife. But now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and a user. I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to fight for yourself, even if it means tearing down everything you thought was real. I was angry, yes, but also determined. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my dignity. Lisa kept trying to call me, begging for another chance, claiming she was sorry and didn't mean to hurt me. But I wasn't buying it. I knew her game. She was trying to manipulate me into letting her stay, into forgiving her, but I saw through all of it. She's a bitch, plain and simple. She lied, cheated, stolen, and now she was trying to spin her way out of it. I told her clearly that I was done, that I'd fight for everything I deserved, and that she'd regret crossing me. I didn't want her in my life anymore, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make sure she paid for what she did. I have to say, though, the emotional toll has been brutal. I'm angry, betrayed, and hurt, but I also feel a strange sense of liberation. I finally see her for who she really is, and I'm not going to let her ruin me. I've learned that sometimes you have to be ruthless to protect yourself. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But I'm determined to rebuild my life, free from her lies and manipulation. If anything, this experience has taught me to be more cautious, more aware, and to never ignore the red flags. I still feel the sting of betrayal every day, but I know I'll come out of this stronger. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I stayed on top of every detail, coordinating with my lawyer, the forensic accountant, and the private investigator. We worked tirelessly to piece together all her financial moves, trying to lock down the inheritance and make sure she couldn't transfer it or hide it any further. Meanwhile, Lisa was getting increasingly hostile. She'd show up unannounced, banging on the door, demanding to talk, trying to manipulate her way back into my good graces. But I had made my decision. I wasn't going to be swayed by her bitchy attitude anymore. One afternoon, she showed up at the house, acting like she was the victim. She was dressed provocatively with tears in her eyes and started pleading. "Please, can't we just talk? I love you. I didn't mean for everything to get so messy." That's when I finally snapped. I told her to get the hell off my property, that I knew she'd been lying to me from the start and that I wasn't going to fall for her manipulations anymore. I told her that I had all the evidence, her hotel meetings, offshore transfers, and her emails. She tried to deny everything, but I just looked at her and said, "It's over, Lisa. You're done." The next step was to get a court order to freeze her accounts and prevent her from transferring any more money. I also filed for divorce, citing infidelity, theft, and deception. I knew this was going to be a long, messy process, but I was prepared. My lawyer told me I had a solid case, especially with the evidence I'd collected. I also made sure to document everything: texts she sent, her calls with Mark, the bank statements. I wanted to be ready for whatever she threw at me. Behind the scenes, I was also working on uncovering the full scope of her plans for the inheritance. I suspected she'd been trying to transfer it offshore or into some secret account. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every penny, and they found multiple transactions to foreign banks. The inheritance was real, and she was trying to hide it. That made me even more determined. I wasn't going to let her get away with stealing what was rightfully mine or hiding money she had no right to. Some nights I'd lie awake, replaying everything. The betrayal stung so badly. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. I felt angry at her, furious even, but also deeply sad. I'd loved her once, believed in us. Now I saw her for what she really was, a bitchy, manipulative cheat. Still, I refused to let her destroy me. I decided I'd fight for my dignity, my money, and my peace of mind. The worst part was seeing how she'd become more aggressive, more manipulative as her plans fell apart. She'd call me names, accuse me of ruining her life, even blame me for her own choices. But I knew the truth. She was the one who lied, stole, and cheated. I had every right to take everything back from her. I also started sorting out my life, changing passwords, securing my bank accounts, and planning for what comes next. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. Throughout all this, I kept my focus on what mattered, getting through this mess and coming out the other side with some shred of dignity intact. I knew I'd be hurt for a long time, and I'd be angry for just as long. But I also knew I wouldn't let her win. I'd rebuild what she tried to destroy, and I'd make sure she paid for her lies and her theft. That's what kept me going, the idea that someday I'd look back at this and realize I survived her betrayal. I'd learned a lot about trust, about the kind of person she really was, and about my own strength. Now I'm in the thick of the legal battle. The court hearings are set and I've got a solid case. I've also started to see a counselor just to help process everything. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, rage, heartbreak, determination, but I'm still standing. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I'm done being the victim. It's time to take back control, to rebuild my life, and to make sure she never pulls this crap again. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals a person's true character. And I'll be damned if I let her define me by her lies. The court dates kept coming, and every hearing seemed to peel back another layer of her deception. The evidence I had gathered was solid: bank statements, emails, witness testimonies from the pie. My lawyer kept telling me I had a strong case to recover the stolen money and get the divorce finalized quickly. Still, every time I thought I was close to closure, something new would pop up. Lisa, of course, was fighting tooth and nail, trying to spin her lies and manipulate the system. She played the victim, crying in court, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that she was innocent of everything. But I knew better. One day I got a call from my lawyer. The judge had granted the temporary restraining order, freezing her accounts and preventing her from moving any more money. That was a huge relief. It meant she couldn't transfer the inheritance offshore or hide it somewhere else. I felt a small sense of victory, but I knew the real fight was just beginning. I was determined to see this through. I'd come too far to let her walk away with a dime of what she stole or hide the truth. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude was getting worse. She'd show up at my house unannounced, demanding to talk, insisting she was innocent and that I was just jealous or paranoid. She'd scream at me, call me names, and throw tantrums like a spoiled brat. Honestly, I'd never seen her like this before. It was like she was desperate to cling to whatever shred of control she had left. I started recording her outbursts just in case I needed them as evidence. I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. One particularly tense afternoon, she barged into the house without warning. Her face was red, eyes wild. She started yelling about how I was ruining her life and how she'd never forgive me if I took everything away from her. I just looked at her, cold and calm, and told her to leave. I said I'd had enough of her bitchy attitude and manipulations. I explained I was working with the lawyer to get everything sorted, that she'd be held accountable for her lies and theft. She scoffed, calling me heartless, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. That night I sat alone, overwhelmed with a mixture of relief and rage. I realized I'd been so blindsided by her lies that I'd let her control too much of my life. But now, I was taking it back. I'd fought hard to gather the evidence, to protect what was mine, and to hold her accountable. I knew the legal battles would continue, but I felt more confident than ever that I was on the right track. I also started to dig into the details of the inheritance more deeply. My lawyer advised me to get a court order to claim my share, especially since Lisa was trying to hide or transfer it. I learned that she had already transferred some funds to an offshore account, but with the evidence I had, I was confident I could contest it. I also found out that her families will left her a significant amount of money, more than I ever knew, and I was determined to get my fair share. I wasn't going to let her steal what was legally mine, no matter how much she tried to manipulate or lie her way out of it. Throughout all this, I've been reflecting on everything I've learned. Betrayal is a brutal thing, especially when it's from someone you trusted so much. Lisa was a bitch, selfish, manipulative, greedy, and I never should have overlooked the warning signs. But here's the thing, I'm still standing. I've faced her anger, her lies, her schemes, and I'm still fighting. I've learned that sometimes you have to be ruthless to protect yourself and your future. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, you can't just glue it back together. But you can move on stronger, wiser, and more cautious. Right now, I'm preparing for the final court hearing. I've got everything in order: evidence, witnesses, legal arguments. I know she'll try to lie her way out of it again, but I'm ready. I want her to realize that her actions have consequences. I want her to understand that stealing, cheating, and manipulating will only come back to bite her. I don't want her to get away with it. I want justice, and I want to get my life back. That's what keeps me going, knowing I'm fighting for what's right. I won't let her destroy me, and I refuse to be a victim anymore. The final court hearing was a whirlwind. I sat there, watching Lisa sit stiffly, her bitchy smirk replaced with a look of desperation. The lawyer laid out all the evidence: her secret meetings with Mark, the offshore transactions, the stolen money, and the forged will. I could see her trying to spin her lies, but the judge wasn't buying it. The forensic accountant's report was irrefutable, and the bank statements proved she'd been planning her escape for months. When it was my turn, I laid everything out plainly: how she'd betrayed my trust, stolen from us, and tried to hide her plans to run with the inheritance. I told the court how her manipulations and lies had shattered what little faith I had left. I was calm, but inside I was boiling. I knew this was the moment I'd been fighting for, the moment I'd finally get justice. The judge ruled in my favor. She ordered her to return the stolen $150, $0, freeze the offshore accounts, and awarded me the $500,000 inheritance. Lisa's face twisted in anger, but she knew she'd lost. Her bitchy attitude crumbled as she realized she was about to lose everything: her freedom, her money, her future. She started crying, screaming about how unfair it was, how I was ruining her life. But the judge dismissed her protests and called her actions reckless and deceitful. Once the court session ended, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I finally had what I fought for: justice. The lawyer told me I could now move forward with the divorce, and I was relieved to know I wouldn't have to see her manipulative face again. I took a deep breath, feeling an odd mix of exhaustion and relief. I'd been through hell, but I was still standing. In the days that followed, I began the process of rebuilding. I filed for divorce officially, and I started the long journey of healing. I also contacted financial advisors to secure my assets and ensure she couldn't come after me again. I knew she'd try to retaliate, maybe even try to appeal, but I had everything documented and I was prepared. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and sometimes people reveal their true colors only when it's too late. Lisa was a bitch, greedy, manipulative, selfish, and I was blind to it for too long. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I faced betrayal, theft, lies, and manipulation, and I fought back. I refused to be a victim, and I took control of my life. Now I'm focusing on myself, on healing and moving forward. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll never allow anyone to betray me like that again. I'll be more cautious, more aware, and I'll trust myself to recognize the red flags next time. This experience has been brutal, but it's also been a wake-up call. I've come out of it more cautious, but also more resilient. To anyone reading this who's going through something similar, trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals the true character of the people around you. And sometimes, you have to cut those people out completely to save yourself. I did, and I'm finally starting to breathe again. Life will go on, and I'll be better for it.